Beauty wandered through the vast, shadowed halls of the beast's castle, her steps echoing softly on the polished marble floors. Every corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, lined with towering columns and gilded arches that glittered under the flickering candlelight. The walls were adorned with portraits of unfamiliar faces, their eyes following her as she passed, adding a strange weight to the already heavy silence of the castle. Despite the warmth of the massive fireplace burning in the main hall, a shiver ran down her spine. It wasn't the cold that unsettled her, it was the feeling of emptiness. The quiet that seemed almost unnatural, as if the castle itself were holding its breath. She stopped in front of a tall, arched window and leaned forward slightly, pressing her hands against the cool glass outside. The moonlight spilled over the garden in silvery waves, illuminating every detail. The roses in the garden were extraordinary, glowing faintly, as if they carried a secret light from within. Their petals were more vibrant than any she had seen, with hues of deep red, gold, and crimson that seemed almost magical. The fragrance was intoxicating, rich and heavy, yet delicate at the same time, filling her senses with an otherworldly sweetness. She reached out to touch the glass again, her reflection mingling with the moonlight, when suddenly a shadow fell across the floor behind her. She spun around quickly, heart racing, and froze. The beast stood there, massive and imposing, his figure silhouetted by the faint light from the window. His fur rippled in the soft breeze that slipped through the slightly open window, and his eyes, dark and intense, studied her carefully. There was a hesitancy in his posture, a subtle tension that betrayed his desire not to frighten her further. "I hope the castle isn't too overwhelming," he said, his voice low and unexpectedly gentle. There was a strange vulnerability in it, almost like the quiet voice of a man who had been long forgotten by the world. "I wanted to make you comfortable." Beauty swallowed hard, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity swirl within her. There was no denying that he was terrifying at first. Glance's claws were sharp, his teeth visible, even in his quiet demeanor, but there was something else in his eyes. Something human and fragile that drew her in despite the initial intimidation. It's beautiful," she admitted softly, her gaze flicking to him briefly before returning to the window. "But it's so quiet and lonely." The beast's ears twitched, and he lowered his massive head slightly, his gaze dropping as though ashamed. "Yes," he admitted, the words almost a whisper, but each one carried the weight of years spent in solitude. "I've lived here for so long that I forgot what it was like to have someone to talk to. But now, with you here?" He paused, uncertainty clouding his expression. "It feels different." Beauty turned to look at him more fully now. Noticing the subtle movements that betrayed his unease, the way his hands trembled slightly, the faint clenching of his jaw, the soft huff of breath as he tried to steady himself. Despite his beastly form, there was a vulnerability she could see, a human element that he could not completely hide. In that moment, her heart softened, and she realized that there was more to him than the fearsome exterior. He was more than a monster. He was a being shaped by sorrow, by longing, by loneliness. She stepped closer to him, her hands clasped lightly in front of her, unsure of what to say or do. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, yet comforting in a strange way. "Maybe," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper, "we don't have to be alone anymore." The beast's eyes widened, a spark of hope flickering deep within their darkness. For a moment, he simply stared at her, unable to find words to respond. Then, slowly, a faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, awkward but genuine. The atmosphere of the castle seemed to shift in that instant. The grand halls, once intimidating in their emptiness, now felt warmer, less foreboding. The silence was no longer oppressive. It was peaceful, almost welcoming. Beauty took another step forward, encouraged by the subtle change in him. "I know it must be strange, being alone here all this time," she continued gently. "But I can stay. If you'd like, we can talk. Or just sit together. I don't mind the quiet." The beast lowered himself onto a nearby bench with a soft thud, the sound echoing through the hall. He looked up at her, a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty in his eyes. I would like that," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I don't know how to act around someone like you. I've forgotten the ways of kindness. of friendship, even of simple conversation. Beauty smiled, a small, warm curve of her lips, and she stepped closer still, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "We'll figure it out together," she said. "You don't have to do it alone anymore." For a while, they sat in silence. The only sound, the faint crackle of the fire and the soft rustle of the curtains in the gentle night breeze. The beast's massive hands rested on his knees, and for the first time he allowed himself to relax, feeling the presence of someone who did not fear him. Someone who could see past the beastly exterior to the heart within. Beauty, in turn, felt a strange sense of safety in his presence. There was power in him. Yes, but also vulnerability. And she sensed that beneath his fearsome appearance lay a soul that had endured much pain and longing. Minutes passed, yet it felt like hours. Slowly, they began to talk, haltingly at first, sharing stories of their lives before the castle, the dreams they had held, the fears they carried. The beast spoke of his isolation, the heavy weight of the curse, and the loneliness that had settled over him like a shadow. Beauty listened, her heart aching for him, and in turn, she shared her own stories, her family, her village, the small joys and struggles she had experienced. With each word exchanged, the invisible walls between them began to crumble, replaced by a tentative trust, a fragile bond that neither of them could yet name, but both could feel. Eventually, the moon climbed higher, casting silvery light across the floor, and Beauty noticed a subtle change in the beast. He seemed lighter somehow, less burdened by the solitude that had defined his existence for so long. The fire in the hearth flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. And for the first time, the castle felt alive rather than oppressive. Beauty reached out tentatively, and the beast did not pull away. Instead, he lowered his massive head, allowing her hand to brush against his fur. The texture was coarse but warm, and she felt the steady thrum of life beneath it. In that simple gesture, words were unnecessary. A bridge had been built between them. A connection born not of magic alone, but of understanding, of empathy, of the courage to see the truth in one another. The night wore on, and neither seemed to notice the passage of time. In the quiet of the castle, surrounded by grandeur and shadows, something extraordinary had begun. The slow, delicate unfolding of trust, the faint glimmer of friendship, the possibility of something more. Beauty and the Beast, so different in form yet similar in hearts, had discovered that even in the darkest, loneliest places, light could emerge when hearts were willing to reach out to one another. And as they sat together, in the warmth of the fire and the glow of the moon, both felt the subtle shift of a world that had once seemed cold and unwelcoming. For the first time, they realized that they did not have to face it alone. In that quiet, fragile moment, the beginnings of love, of companionship, and of hope had taken root, silent, gentle, and infinitely powerful.